Tonight, we pull back the velvet curtain on royal stories that begin not with crowns, but with hearts. In palaces where duty often drowns out private longing, true love found a way to breathe. Our first couple is Victoria and Albert, a union of duty that learned to listen to desire. They met in a world where ceremony could swallow a person whole. Yet something tender began to rise between them. Victoria, young and untested, carried the weight of a crown that could swallow a person whole. Albert, practical, patient, with a kind stubbornness, became the steady ground under her storms. They married in 1840, not out of celebrity but out of a shared belief that a throne was nothing without a home. He brought a new rhythm to the court, letters in lavender ink, quiet evenings in a candlelit study, and a promise that a queen could be both royal and human. They faced heartbreak in public and loneliness in private. She learned to lean into his counsel. He learned to listen when the world whispered that a queen's heart could not afford ordinary joys. Albert's letters to Victoria, preserved in archives, reveal a man who believed in slow, deliberate love. He wrote of turning a garden into a sanctuary for the weary, of waiting when the lines of state demanded attention, of choosing tenderness when the crown pressed hard. Their love grew in the margins of a life that demanded perfection. Then came the trials that tested them: Queen Victoria's illness, family pressures, and the loneliness of empire. Yet their bond endured, not by blinding heat but by patient repair. Victoria learned to trust, not only in a husband but in the idea that a marriage could be both a partnership and a sanctuary. Their story isn't about fireworks but about a patient, enduring flame. Next, we travel to a different century and a different continent where public life collides with private longing: Elizabeth II and Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Born into different worlds, they found a way to keep their promises through decades of changing weather. Their courtship survived the long shadows of war, the glare of cameras, and the quiet loneliness of long separations when royal duties pulled them far apart. Philip spoke little of his own heartbreak, but his actions spoke volumes. Carrying a heavy burden with grace, supporting Elizabeth through crises and celebrations, and teaching a stubborn loyalty to their shared path. Elizabeth, for her part, learned the art of balancing authority with warmth, governance with tenderness, ceremony with small, secret acts of care. There were moments of warmth, gloves pressed into his palm at the palace entrance, a whispered joke behind the doors of a carriage, a shared sigh as they faced a difficult decision. Their love endured not because every day was easy, but because they chose to come back to each other after every storm. In other corners of the world, romance wore different clothes. In the glamour and risk of mid-20th century cinema, Grace Kelly stepped from cinema to stardom and then into the pageantry of royalty as Princess Grace of Monaco. Her story with Rainier III was both fairy tale and real-life clash, a blend of charm, duty, and the uneasy truth that two people from different worlds would have to negotiate a new language. Grace believed in beauty, but she chose a different stage for love, the palace at Monte Carlo, where the world watched and waited. Rainier offered steadiness, a throne that could be a weight, a partner who saw in her not just a glamorous face but a mind that could plan a future. They learned to negotiate the glare of the public eye with private tenderness, a shared glance in a room full of cameras, a quiet conversation after a thunderous ball. From there, we jump to the more tumultuous stories of political power and enduring affection: Napoleon and Josephine. Their alliance was born in the heat of revolution, between ambition and affection. Josephine's letters, full of longing and laughter, remind us that love can endure even when circumstances pull at the seams of a marriage. Napoleon, a man who believed in battles and conquests, found in Josephine a heart that could soften the hardest edge. She gave him a home in exile of the heart when battles and borders divided them. Theirs was not a fairy tale of guaranteed happiness. It was a living negotiation of sacrifice, trust, and renewed. We meet a couple of the modern era, William and Kate, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Their love story reads like a contemporary romance carved into public life. They met at university, exchanged shy smiles, and then accepted the unexpected itinerary of royal duty. Their love endured long hours apart during training. The glare of cameras when every gesture is a headline. The weight of public expectation. And the quieter moments when a simple walk through a park becomes a sanctuary. The strength of their bond lies not in dramatic gestures but in small, steady choices. Standing together in the face of scrutiny. Supporting each other through parenthood. Nurturing a sense of normalcy within the extraordinary. Choosing to be a united front in the toughest decisions. They remind us that love can mature in a life lived in full view. That trust grows in the spaces between duty and desire. We cannot forget the more intimate, less discussed strands of royal romance, Charles and Camilla, whose relationship weathered scandal and time. Their journey was a study in resilience, a second chance, a forgiveness that reshaped a life, a vow renewed not with grandeur alone but with the quiet, stubborn promise to be there for one another when the cameras turned away. This is the ache and hope of true love behind thrones. The moment when two people choose to stay, again and again. Not because their world is easy, but because their hearts are certain. It is in the late-night conversations that become early morning plans. It is in the shared sorrow that becomes shared strength. It is in the daily acts, letters tucked into drawers. A hand held during a difficult public appearance. A gentle reminder that a life of service is best carried with someone who sees your humanity and your courage. The beauty of these stories lies in their imperfections. Perfection would have erased the wrinkles of time, but these couples carry them with grace. They reveal how love is not an escape from life's obligations but a commitment to weather them together. The throne is heavy, yes, but it becomes lighter when love accompanies it. And the stories we tell are not about flawless princes and flawless princesses, but about people who learn to forgive, to listen, to grow, and to rebuild trust after it has been tested. If you're listening on a night when the world feels loud and chaotic, these tales offer something almost magical. Hope that true love can be found again in the most unlikely corners and nurtured into something lasting. That is the promise behind the thrones, that romance, if tended with patience and courage, can turn a life into a beacon for others. It can remind us that the happy ending is not a mirror of a single grand gesture, but a collection of small, brave choices made day after day. So tonight, let us carry these stories forward not as relics of a distant past, but as living reminders that love is resilient. It grows in the soil of shared work, in the quiet tasks of daily life, and in the unspoken confession that you still choose each other after the world has moved on. And maybe, just perhaps, that is the most royal of all truths, that love, when tended with care, becomes a throne of its own. A royal court made not of stone but of trust and tenderness. Until next time, may your own story find a patient, loyal partner and a home in your heart. Thank you for listening. From dusty archives to dawnlit balconies, other royal unions remind us that love survives even when nations lean on them. Imagine a couple from sun-washed courts where lineage could press in on them. Yet they chose to carve time for each other amid endless ceremonies. They learned to share the weight of duty, to borrow strength from one another during droughts of trust, to celebrate small returns. A whispered compliment after a tense council. A quiet meal kept simple in a royal kitchen. A hand held across a crowded ballroom. Even when critics whispered that their paths were scripted, they rewrote the lines with acts of care. Late-night letters tucked into pillowcases. A secret stroll through palace gardens. A vow spoken in a corner away from the glare. Their patience became a surface where trust could reflect back a brighter future. If you listen closely, their stories resemble a map of tiny victories that together light a grand, lasting flame. Across oceans and centuries, this is the common thread. Love grows when two people keep choosing each other, day after day. In plain sight and behind velvet curtains. And when the world resumes its noise, their example invites us to tend our own hearts with the same quiet bravery. Even as critics whispered, they kept choosing. Again.